Wrong. Iran is Persian, not Arab. They don't speak Arabic, they speak Persian. And no, it's not as simple as American versus British English. Persian and Arabic are completely different languages and cultures. They both have different grammar and structure. A Persian speaker can't understand Arabic and vice versa. If you want to see how deep this divide goes, look at the body of water between Iran and Arabia. Iranians call it the Persian Gulf, Arabs call it the Arabian Gulf. They can't even agree on what to call the water between them. Sounds a little familiar, huh? Anyways, this divide is over 2,000 years old, and it still impacts the conflicts we see in the Middle East today. Hi, I'm Sean with Mapped Out, and this is why Iran stayed Persian when everyone else around them became Arab. To understand why Persia survived when so many other cultures got erased, you need to see what Persia was before Islam even existed. Around 4400 BCE, settlements appeared at the site of Susa in southwestern Iran. This place would later become the capital and heart of the Elamite civilization. So this region has over 6,000 years of continuous urban culture. Then around 550 BCE, Cyrus the Great founded the Achaemenid Persian Empire. This becomes the world's first superpower. At its peak, it stretched from Egypt to the edge of India, almost as large as the continental United States. Cyrus wasn't just conquering territory, he was building something way different at the time. We know this because of the Cyrus Cylinder, essentially a record of his vision. It outlines his policies, like that conquered people should keep their religions and customs. Revolutionary for the time period. Previous empires were built on repression, but Cyrus tried to build his on tolerance and respect. The empire was divided into provinces called satrapies. Each one of them was semi-autonomous. The local traditions were respected as long as they paid tribute and didn't rebel. This wasn't some loose collection of tribes. It was centralized bureaucracy on a scale no one had seen before. The Persians also built infrastructure. The royal road ran across the empire with an organized postal service. The mounted couriers, known as agarium, could reach the most remote areas of the empire in just 15 days. It was so impressive that a Greek historian wrote about the Persian couriers. Neither snow nor rain nor heat nor gloom of night stayed these courageous couriers from their swift completion of their appointed rounds. It probably sounds familiar. Most people think that's the US Postal Service motto, but no, it was written about the Persians thousands of years ago. During this period, Zoroastrianism became the defining element of the Persian culture. It introduced concepts like free will, the struggle between order and chaos, representation of justice and truth, discord and lies. It wasn't just a religion though, it became part of how the Persians saw themselves. Let's fast forward to the Sasanian Empire, which ran from 224 to 651 CE. This is the peak ancient Persian civilization. Over 12,000 years of native Persian dynasties by this point. The Sasanians were more centralized than the Achaemenids. They built a professional military with heavy cavalry called cataphracts. They formalized Zoroastrianism as a state religion. They controlled trade routes, and they had a rigid social hierarchy that actually worked. This matters a lot, because when the Arabs show up, they're not conquering some backwatered, unorganized nomadic tribes. They're conquering one of the most sophisticated civilizations on the planet, so try to keep that in mind. So in the 630 CE, the Arab armies, which were like newly unified under Islam, explode out of Arabia. Within 2 decades, they've conquered the Sasanian Persian Empire, along with Egypt, Syria, and Iraq. Everywhere they go, Islam spreads, and with it, Arabic becomes the language, religion, government, and administration. Egypt becomes Arab. The previous Coptic language dies out. Egyptian identity gets absorbed and merged into Arab identity. Iraq, they become Arab. The ancient Mesopotamian cultures vanish into the Arab world. Syria, it was the same thing. Persia ends up converting to Islam, and the Sasanian Empire collapses. Arab governors take over the cities. For a while, it looks like Persia might go the same way as the others. But it doesn't. The Persian language and culture survives. Their identity, separate from Arabs, is still there. How? Part of it is geography. The Zagros Mountains in the west, the Alborz Mountains in the north, these created natural fortresses. And when the Arab armies take the cities, the Persian communities just retreated into the mountains, where their traditions kept chugging along. But there's more to it as well. Persian civilization was too established just to disappear. You can't erase 12 centuries of centralized empire building overnight. The Arabs conquered Persia at least as far as the military was concerned, but the Persians still won out culturally. The Abbasid Caliphate moved its capital to Baghdad, closer to the Persian sphere of influence, and the Arab rulers start hiring Persian bureaucrats to actually run the empire. They adopt a bunch of Persian aspects to merge into their way of life. The same bureaucratic model that the Achaemenids built earlier? Well, the Arabs started it back up. They realized they needed it. It was too difficult to run an empire this size without sophisticated admin. And the Persians loved paperwork, apparently. Around 1010, a Persian poet named Ferdowsi finishes a massive epic called the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings. It's 60,000 verses. So no, I can't quote it all, but it tries to cover the entire history of Persia from the creation of the world to the Arab conquest. And what makes it special is that Ferdowsi deliberately ignores Islamic creation stories. He tells Persian creation myths instead, pre-Islamic mythology. This was his answer to everyone who tried to erase Persian culture. He wrote, "I have revived the Persian with this Persian poem." And he kinda did. The book is still standard reading in Iranian schools today. It helped preserve the Persian language. So while Egypt, Syria, and Iraq adopted Arabic and became Arab in identity, Persia kept its language, which helped keep its culture alive. In the end, Persia didn't just survive the Arab conquest, it Persianized its own conquerors. Or is it Persianified? Anyways, let's jump to the year 1500. If you're keeping track, Persia has been Muslim for about 850 years at this point. Islam is deeply embedded into the culture now. Persian poets write about Islamic themes. But a big difference compared to today is, in 1500, Iran was Sunni Muslim. About 90% of Persians were Sunni, same as the Ottoman Empire in the west, same as Central Asia to the east, same as most of the Islamic world. Then in 1501, everything changed. A new dynasty seizes power, the Safavids. And the important detail is that this is the first local dynasty to rule all of Iran since the Sasanian Empire fell 850 years earlier. For 8.5 centuries, Persia had been ruled by the Arabs, Turks, Mongols, all foreign dynasties. Now Persians are back in charge. Their leader, Shah Ismail I, captures the city of Tabriz and makes a radical decision. Iran is going to be Shia Muslim, and it was mandatory. The Shah was 14 years old at the time, and he was forcing religions onto a whole nation. Kinda has a Game of Thrones vibe. So Ismail had the backing of these fierce tribal warriors called Qizilbash. He used the military to unify the country and force the religious conversion. Now, if you're not a theology expert, don't worry, just think of the Sunni-Shia split kinda like the Catholic-Protestant split in Europe. Both sides follow the same book and they follow the same God, but they spent centuries arguing over who should have been in charge, and then they spent the next few centuries fighting wars about it. And then at 14, the Shah decided Iran was officially switching sides. This wasn't a gentle process if you can imagine. Sunni Persians were forced to convert, escape, or be executed. This was the biggest religious change since the Arab conquest. But why would they do this switch to Shia? It was kind of the trifecta of branding, strategy, and survival. In the west was the massive Sunni Ottoman Empire, and to the east there were much more Sunni kingdoms in Central Asia. Iran was essentially trapped in a Sunni sandwich. By forcing Iran to become Shia, the empire created a permanent ideological barrier. They created a wedge that made it impossible for Iran to be absorbed into a generic Islamic identity. Later kings like Shah Abbas I took this a step further. He didn't trust the local tribes to stay loyal, so he created an elite class of soldiers called ghulams. The ghulams were outsiders with no local ties. Their only loyalty was to the throne. For the next 200 years, this new unified Iran stayed locked in a permanent war with the Ottomans. These aren't just territorial disputes, they're religious wars. Sunni versus Shia. That decision in 1501 stuck. Today, between 90 and 95% of Iranians are Shia Muslim. Iran is the focal point of Shia Islam worldwide. The demographic completely flipped, and it created a permanent religious divide between Iran and its neighbors that still defines Middle Eastern politics. Let's jump to the modern era. Persia changes its name to Iran. Jump a little more. And in the 1970s, Iran is ruled by the Shah, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. In 1971, the Shah decides to throw a party what people call the Party of the Century. It's held at Persepolis, the ruins of the ancient Persian capital, for the 2500th anniversary of the Persian Empire. Calling this a party is a bit of an understatement. It was a $100 million flex. The Shah invited every king, president, and emperor he could find to a 5-star campsite in the middle of the desert. It was a tent city with a mountain of caviar. He literally flew the staff, the world's most famous restaurant at the time, from Paris, to then serve imperial peacock stuffed with foie gras. Yuck. He even imported 50,000 songbirds from Europe, just for most of them to die in the desert heat within 3 days. It was like an ancient Persian cosplay convention. The context of the party was clear though. Iran's greatness didn't start with Islam. To the Shah, the real Iran was the one that Cyrus the Great had built 2,500 years ago. and he was trying to pick up where the ancient kings left off. He even changed the national calendar to start with Cyrus's reign instead of the Prophet Muhammad's. That didn't go well. But there was a tiny problem. The actual people of Iran weren't invited. While foreign royalty was sipping champagne and glamping, the average Iranian was struggling to buy bread. To them, the Shah wasn't celebrating their history. He was mocking their Shia faith and wasting their money. He threw the party of the century for the world and kind of forgot the people who lived there. And as history shows, that's a mistake you only get to make once. 8 years later, the Iranian Revolution overthrows the Shah. The new government is an Islamic republic led by Ayatollah Khomeini. It's an interesting balancing act because they reject Western influence, obviously, but they also reject Arab influence. They want Iran to be Islamic for sure, but of the Persian Shia Islamic flavor. The demographics there make it even more complex. Iran isn't entirely Persian ethnically. The country's got this multi-ethnic mosaic, with Persians making around 61% of the population. There's even a small Arab minority, around 2%, mostly down in the southwestern oil province of Khuzestan. 1 year after the revolution, in September of 1980, Iraq invades. Iraq's dictator, Saddam Hussein, has a plan. He knows Iran just went through a revolution. The military is disorganized and the government is unstable. And he thinks this is the perfect time to strike. He's targeting Khuzestan, the oil-rich province right on the border. And his thought process is that Khuzestan has the Arab minority, and they'll rise up and join his invasion. Boy, was he wrong. The Arab masses in Khuzestan, they don't defect. They fight for Iran against their fellow Arabs. The war is pretty brutal and drags on for 8 years, and around 1 million people die. But Iran's territorial integrity holds. Khuzestan never flips. The Arab minority proves that their Iranian identity is stronger than their ethnic ties. The war finally ends in 1988. Just exhaustion on both sides. But the lesson became clear. Being Iranian matters more than just being Arab, even for Iran's actual Arab population. It really just highlights how strong the Persian cultural pride is everywhere in Iran. Nowruz, the Persian New Year, is the most important national holiday, and schools still teach Persian poems and literature. Speaking of culture, Iran ranks 4th globally for cultural heritage, and 10th in UNESCO World Heritage Sites. The government might be Islamic, but the cultural foundation is still deeply Persian. So why does all this Persian identity still matter? Because it explains everything Iran does in the Middle East today. Take Iran versus Saudi Arabia. On the surface, it looks like normal geopolitical rivalry, 2 regional powers competing for influence. But underneath, it's Persian versus Arab, Shia versus Sunni, divisions that go back over 1,000 years. Iran has built what it calls the axis of resistance. Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, the Houthis in Yemen, Shia militias in Iraq. Did you notice the pattern? All Shia groups, or at a minimum aligned with Iran's Shia government. They're all opposed by Sunni Arab states like Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Egypt. By backing these groups, Iran isn't trying to lead the Arab world. It's using a mix of Persian nationalism and its status as the focal point of Shia Islam to try to challenge the centuries-old Sunni Arab order. Geography gives Iran a massive amount of power over your daily life. They control the northern coast of the Strait of Hormuz, an important path for oil tankers. 20% of the planet's oil passes right by their front door. If Iran decides to block that path, gas prices globally could skyrocket before you even had a chance to hit subscribe and like on this video. That's the kind of power that keeps world leaders up at night. For the last few years, the pressure has been rising in Iran. It's been a constant barrage of crushing US sanctions, mysterious assassinations on their top nuclear scientists, and messy proxy wars from Yemen to Syria. On paper, this was an attempt to contain Iran's nuclear program, but in reality, it was strangling the country. Inside Iran, the pressure cooker is finally starting to whistle. When you have triple-digit inflation on food, geopolitics stops being an abstract idea and starts being the reason you can't afford dinner. We saw massive protests and an economy in freefall. Iranians weren't just asking for political change, they wanted a future that wasn't being buried under the weight of isolation. By the start of 2026, you kinda knew something had to give. And on February 28th, the lid finally blew off. The US and Israel launched a coordinated strike directly at Iranian leadership. And as of right now, in March 2026, the world is watching Iran reach a literal breaking point. Reports indicate that the supreme leader was killed in the strike. Iran has responded with strikes of its own across the region. The country and the rest of the Middle East is in crisis, and it's a humanitarian disaster. The stakes are enormous, and it looks like the end of an era. But to understand what happens next, you have to stop looking at the news and start looking at the history. History tells us that Iran is a cultural sponge. It's been invaded by Greeks, Arabs, Mongols, and Turks. Every single time, the invaders took the cities and changed the government. Every single time, the Persian identity won out. The invaders didn't erase Persia. Persia absorbed the invaders. Within a few generations, the Arab rulers were using Persian bureaucrats. The Turkish sultans put the Persian title of King of Kings on their coin. So when it comes to its history, the borders shift, the religions change, and governments fall. But the core identity of Iran, like the language, the holidays, and the belief that they are heirs to an ancient civilization, remains untouched. No matter who emerges from this current crisis in Tehran, they won't be ruling an Arab province. They'll be ruling a nation that has seen empires rise and fall for 2,500 years and has outlasted them all. Iran isn't Arab, and it never was. If history is any guide, it never will be. It is Persian, always has been. I'm Sean with Mapped Out, and I appreciate you watching this video. History has a funny way of repeating itself in the Middle East and on the Iranian plateau. Next week I'm showing you how this country is a nightmare for invaders, and why geography might be the thing that saves Persian identity once again. I hope to see you then.